Sounds like you dropped it out into like an avalanche or something.
Yeah. Ooh, I gotta close some
Okay, so
applications
yeah,
real
just on
quick.
that topic, I guess we can talk a little bit about comment reading.
Yeah, did we get
So
any
yeah,
comments?
we got one comment from Titan. He said very epic, so that was a very
Ah,
informative comment. So
uh-huh.
yeah, always glad to have Titan there. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if you guys are watching and you like the show and you want to talk to us more, we're gonna read all the comments. So just put a comment down what game you're playing, what you want us to talk about next week. We'll talk about it. Doesn't matter what game
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have certain preferences. We will definitely not have as much thoughts on certain games compared to others, but we're always interested to hear about new stuff.
As long as it's not too expensive, I will basically play any game that you ask me to because I'm currently kind of between games. I'm back to just working on finishing up All Remembrance's Elden Ring level 1, so uh, until Lies of P comes out, which I feel like probably won't take me very long to play, yeah, just I'm kind of an open book right now, so.
All right, yeah. Last week we talked a little bit about Canadian legislation for like 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
I got a comment privately about that and about how I fucked up. So on my end, I'm sorry, but what I want to clarify is that
Uh-huh.
first of all, I was wrong about the Canadian media bill in the first place. The
Mm-hmm.
legislation is not actually about like mandating that Canadian content is seen. It's more just that major social media networks have to pay for using Canadian media,
Oh.
which is a pretty different context. But
Yes.
yeah, anyway, it's not like we're in some communist state where Canada is like forcing certain types of media. It's just more just about supporting Canadian creators by
Well, but there
supporting
are
them if you are a major American publisher.
but there are rules with music about like the percentage of, I know at least on radio, but I think also on television, like the percentage of music that gets played, like there has to be, I think, I don't know what the percentage is, but there has to be like a certain percentage of like Canadian content. That's like been a law for like decades, I think.
Yeah, we'd have to see. I don't know that much about it. I don't want
Yeah.
to make any claims that
No,
I'm like
that's
an
legit.
authority on
That's
this.
real. That's real. Like
I
if you
believe
like
you. You know about this
you
stuff.
you notice if you're like an American and you like are listening, if you're like you're on a road trip and you're listening to the radio, like as soon as you get into Canada, it's like significantly more Rush gets played, and like you know what I mean, like Nickelback. Actually, I don't even know if Nickelback counts as Canadian at this point because are they like fully, like how does that work? Like if it's on an American record label. I guess yeah. There's this. Maybe this is just an ongoing question with the podcast that we need to eventually have a guest on who's like a Canadian media lawyer or whatever, and then we can
Like we bring Celine
get
Dion
some
on here
answers.
or Michelle Bublé, they can answer these questions. I'm sure they'd love to come on the podcast.
Those people are both Canadian too. Wow. Yeah. Could we get
Is Celine
uh
Dion even Canadian? I think I might have just said something really stupid.
let's look that. Yeah. Let's look that up. I didn't know.
Canadian singer, thank God. Okay, I'm not dumb. Let's bring on
Wow.
Ryan Gosling. He can talk all about how
Wait, Ryan
the
Gosling's
Canadian
Canadian
media
too?
dynamic is. Yeah, I know he's Canadian too.
What?
He's literally
Wow.
everyone's like literally main character, and he's Canada, so literally everyone is Canadian. True story.
Yeah. I mean, there's. Yeah, I mean, you literally have everyone.
Let's bring Ted Cruz on here.
This shouldn't be too hard. Yeah. Get Chad
Anyway,
Kroger.
yeah. And
Okay.
the other thing I kind of jumped into was like I mentioned last week about how there's not like a significant like legislative push for gaming regulation in Canada, which
Mm-hmm.
is also isn't true.
Oh.
It's not really talked about that much in the news, but there is a couple sources that discuss how there needs to be more regulation about how, in the same vein as paying for Canadian news,
Mm-hmm.
Canadian game studios need to be compensated for their relations with the international gaming industry.
Mm. Hmm. All
Anyway,
right.
that's a whole other topic. I haven't looked at that much. I just did a cursory look on Google to double check that. So yeah, it does exist. Gamers are rising up, in fact, in Canada. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. That's good. I will
So yeah,
retract
let's
my
jump
statement from
into
last
the.
week.
We will track our statement about how gamers are incompetent in the political arena because they are wielding lots of power. They're lobbying very hard for gaming power. So good job, gamers.
Specifically, last
Anyway,
week I
let's
did
jump
say
into.
gamers rise up, so I do retract saying gamers rise up. I do not think that needs to happen anymore.
I think Justin Trudeau needs to rise up now and rise up to the standards of gamers that we're setting in the political stage.
Justin Trudeau, why are you not more outraged about the Call of Duty Warzone meta situation? I think you really need
Come on,
to, yeah,
Justin.
just get
Justin,
let's.
have you seen how bad double Zimmermans are in Armored Core 6? Come on. You got to do something about this. Make Miyazaki fix it.
This is yes. Okay.
Anyway, let's jump into this week's big story, which conveniently like blew up like yesterday. I think we're recording this September 14th, and I think just yesterday or the day before, Unity Engine, which is like the engine that pretty much like I'd say half the games you play are made on, is introducing this terrible like runtime fee for its installer.
Hmm.
Basically, if you are a game dev on Unity, you develop your game through the Unity engine, you have a license to use Unity engine that you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
From now on, whenever a user installs your game for the first time, Unity is going to charge you like a 2 cent fee.
Ooh, wow.
And
Okay.
so, this doesn't sound so bad at first once you start thinking about how many downloads there's going to be from each game. Like if you're a big studio using Unity, think about, Among Us, Genshin Impact, Fall Guys, Marvel Snap, Ultra Kill, all these
Right.
games.
Games that are
Subnautica
ostensibly
Rust.
free also. Well, now, okay. So that's
These
basically
games
the
are being
same as like
downloaded millions of times.
right. That's a kind of similar to like when like an episode of television is played, people get like a check from that, but that's not like charging the consumer directly for it. It's like the studio just has
They're
to
not
pay
charging
for
the
it.
consumer here either. They're charging the developer.
They're charging the developer, right? Of course. So just kind of like that, but that's completely unprecedented, right? For like no other engine or piece of software that's
No.
used by game
I
developers
mean,
do that,
it doesn't
right?
make any sense to me in the first place because,
Uh-huh.
like, you're already paying a license, like a subscription license to use
Mm-hmm.
this software. I don't see
Mm-hmm.
why they'd charge you more.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Because
what's
then
the
it's
point of
just.
having like an enterprise tier pricing scheme if you don't want people to use it for enterprise? Like, if you want
Mm-hmm.
to disincentivize that type of business, I guess I don't want to
Totally.
disincentivize. I just want to fuck you over because you've already sunk like 3 to 4 years of time into using this engine, and it's like, what are you going to do now? Switch another one? Have fun, forehead.
And now, isn't there
So yeah,
also there's some alleged like insider trading accusations going on here, right? Like
let's not get into that.
you don't
I
want to
don't
talk
want to
about
allege
that?
anything.
Okay, that was what I was
Let's
seeing
not let's not jump into something.
on the
Let's not
K-pop
jump into something we're
Discord. I
not
was seeing
qualified to talk about.
people discussing some shenanigans with alleged shenanigans with stockholders.
I don't think it's
but
related to this story. I
I
don't
see.
care about that.
Gotcha. Um, well,
But yeah,
okay.
I
Now,
mean, the
let's back
the
up a
big
second
concern
here.
for me is
Okay, yeah.
you go
What's your
first.
concern? Yeah, no, you go ahead because mine is kind of will segue into something else. So you should start.
Yeah, so the biggest game I'm concerned about with this topic is
Pokemon, right? Your
this little
favorite
game.
game.
Maybe you've heard of it called Hollow Knight. It's
Ah,
this little indie game that's like just maybe you might not have heard of it. They're making a sequel to it called I think Silk
Hollow
Song.
Knight.
You might have heard of the game Silk Song. It's been in development for 30 bajillion years,
What does
and
Hollow Knight?
it's been
What game
delayed.
has a Hollow Knight in it? Are you sure you're not talking about Dark Souls? Isn't that the game that has the
I'm
Hollow
pretty sure we're
Knight in it?
talking about Sekiro actually.
Oh, right, because the
Yeah,
sculptures
it's got the guy called
are
Robert.
hollow. Right. Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, Hollow Knight Silk Song is the sequel to the beloved, super acclaimed, pretty much perfect game Hollow Knight.
That no one has
Everyone
any
loves it.
issues
It's
with. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like one of the most beloved indie games ever made,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been making a sequel to Hollow Knight called Hollow Knight Silk Song for like fucking I don't know like 5 years now. It's been delayed
Mm-hmm.
twice, I think.
Yeah.
Microsoft's been trying to get it out the door for so long now, and they keep delaying it because it's like a very small team and it's like a super ambitious project.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hollow Knight was like so good, and just like it's bewilders anyone how like a team that small of like 5 people made like a game as perfect as Hollow Knight.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're making Hollow Knight Silk Song on the Unity engine,
Mm.
and this new runtime fee is set to come into play at the start of 2024 on January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is the team Cherry, the team behind Hollow Knight, are they going to rush to get this game out the door before the runtime fee kicks in so they can get most of their sales before it kicks in?
Hmm.
Or are they going to, postpone the game indefinitely to remake in a different engine, which is like Apocalypse ending? If that happens, I'm going to fucking go kill the Unity developing team
You're
in
gonna
Minecraft.
Parody. You are going to go Unabomber mode on Unity.
Yeah,
Unity Bomber
allegedly.
mode. Yeah,
In Minecraft.
allegedly in a video game you're gonna
Unity
there's gonna
Bomber.
be a movie made about you doing that. Okay, now my question is, I kind of understand what this is, but now what is an engine? Is that just like a
What is an engine? It's a
What is
great
a gaming
question.
engine? I
So
understand what it is in practice because like if you play like two games that are from the same studio or the same developer like that came out around the same time, it's pretty obvious that it's like oh, it's you can see that there's like stuff in it that looks really similar or like you could imagine how like whatever. Okay, anyway, what is that? Like what is that? What is an engine?
so you have like yeah, I guess the easiest analogy is like programming languages, which is it's
Okay.
also kind of like a confusing analogy because programming languages are what game engines are built on in the first place. But
Mm.
imagine you have like your C programming language, is like system language. It's like the
Mhm.
most basic building blocks for code possible,
Mhm.
and then you have a bunch of like sub languages that are built on C that are like designed for more specific tasks.
Mhm.
And so if you want to program stuff, you want to be a front end developer, web developer, mobile developer, whatever, you're probably not going to program in C. You're probably going to use one of those sub languages
Hmm.
because, building everything from scratch every time you want to start a new project is not really ideal.
Mm.
So you want to use the foundations of a language that already exists to do that
Hmm.
for you. So that's what a game engine is. A game engine is just a platform to combine assets and animations and mechanics and physics
Hmm.
together in a more seamless environment so it's all compatible and you don't
Hmm.
have to spend a ton of time programming it by hand.
I see.
I guess the most popular example would be Unreal Engine,
Right.
developed by Epic Games. And they are, lots of developers are jumping on Unreal Engine train because they have really good lighting physics and it's super easy to use. And
Mm.
it's a great option for any developer that wants to try to create like a realistic AAA game.
I see.
Unity Engine is kind of like famous for being very simple to use,
Yeah.
which is why it's used by like a lot of simple type of games. Like Among Us is probably the biggest one that uses Unity Engine.
Mhm.
Genshin Impact is one I found out about yesterday that uses Unity Engine, which is like
Mm.
that's the most nuclear example for me. If this change goes through, is how is Genshin Impact going to get affected? Because there's it's just compared to most other AAA games, Genshin
Mhm.
Impact is just a monolith. It's so much bigger.
Yeah, for sure.
So you
That's
have to
gonna.
think about how games like that, which is like probably the biggest game right now, besides stuff like Call of Duty or Fortnite.
Mhm.
How is that going to be influenced by this new change?
Now, who publishes Genshin? Is that Tencent?
Tencent is one of the companies that owns the studio. I think it's called. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I know it's like a Chinese company. Genshin developer is MiHoYo. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. They make
Okay.
like the reason they're so successful. I think kind of boils down to a couple things. Basically, just a combination of the fact that their products are all very like cross compatible with every platform. So the games are on mobile and also on major consoles and on PC.
Yeah.
They're designed to appeal to the widest audience possible in that regard. Obviously,
Mm.
they have a huge amount of cultural appeal with like anime fans. That's mainly the target audience there. Not
Mhm.
only in Asia, Southeast Asia, but also in the West.
Mm.
They try to have localization for Japanese, Chinese, and English.
Mhm.
I think maybe not Japanese. That might be misinformation. I'm not sure.
Mm.
But yeah, and then also on top of that, they just have a very robust monetization scheme. I guess is the
Right.
most cynical way to describe it.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah,
what I mostly know about that game is that it's like a mobile game where you can just like pour money into it. Uh.
yeah. You get your anime girls. It's worth it,
Mhm.
man. Trust me.
Mhm.
This next one, I'm gonna get my favorite anime girl. Just one more spin, bro.
Sounds
Anyway,
good to me. Yeah.
it's you can definitely
What
there's a lot of
else do you
cynical
need to
takes
use
about the
it
game. That's
for?
not really what we're here for. But yeah, the main
Mhm.
getting back to the topic, it's kind of like if you want to have Unity Engine be a tool for small time developers or developers that want to create in like a very simple environment for simple games,
Mhm.
games that don't necessarily need to be like super graphically robust necessarily.
Yeah.
I think Unity is like the perfect engine for that, and I think that's the company behind Unity probably realizes that, which is why they are now like, oh hey, we can just we can scam these poor fuckers who have spent the last 2 or 3 years of their lives in this engine by just
Mhm.
forcing this runtime fee on them through EULA, and now they can't do anything about it unless they want to start from scratch. Because like the
Yeah.
engine is where you build everything for your game. It's where all the assets go,
Mhm.
all the mechanics, all the physics, and trying to build outside of that is like starting from scratch basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
put
I
a
guess.
meme in our notes. It's kind of just like the picture is like the picture in the gaming community is like Unity shooting itself in the foot, with when in reality it's more like Unity kind of is like holding everyone hostage, or they're holding like mutually assured destruction, because if they go down, then all of these huge games that are like key to the gaming industry in terms of fiscal majority, that's going to be a huge problem. I mean, I'd say Unreal Engine's definitely bigger, but there's a huge chunk of games that make up like most of where the revenue for games is coming from today are made in Unity.
Mm-hmm.
And this also raises some questions about how these parent companies that are owning these games that are built in Unity are going to react, because you can already
Yeah.
start to think about how is Tencent going to react to Unity trying to get runtime fees off all the games that they're going to have to pay. How is Microsoft going to react to a bunch of their games being forcibly monetized in a way they don't want? Because they're also going to be paying at the end. Sony, Nintendo, there's a couple Pokemon games in this list, I think. So yeah,
Mm.
all these major companies, which are huge stakeholders in these games, they're going to be the ones getting shelved this new cost, and I don't think they're going to be happy.
Yeah.
That could go to legal action. That could just go to these games being pulled from the stores, which I honestly think is the most likely outcome. It's just going to be Unity games are no longer going to be available through these storefronts. You're just gonna have to buy them on like Unity's webpage or whatever, not on Steam, or just not
Right.
on consoles at all, honestly. So yeah, we're kind of in this limbo state for the next 3-4 months, and see if Unity is going to either reverse these changes, or they're just going to drop the nuke and Unity is going to effectively be wiped off the face of every major storefront that gamers are familiar with.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, why?
Yeah. Anyway,
Like, is it just purely like a greed move, or is it that they like are not making enough money by just
they're
having
making so much money. I mean,
because people like pay to use it, presumably, right? And like they can charge
there's
them quite a bit.
there's like they have different tiers. They have
Yeah.
like a basic tier, which is like if you're like an indie developer, you want to get into
Mm-hmm.
making games for the first time, you can just
Mm-hmm.
access that pretty cheap, I think, or even for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're like a professional development team, you have to pay like the pro license version, which has a subscription model attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have an enterprise version, which basically has the same tools as pro, but with more favorable long-term pricing, I think, is how it works. So in this instance, with this new runtime fee, it's like the pro version of Unity has the most egregious fees attached to this, and then the enterprise version has like slightly cut down fees for runtime use. What I
And
think
now,
is really like comedic about this whole situation is like
yeah.
they just kind of like announced this change, like dropping a bomb. They're just like, oh yeah, by the way, here's this chart that shows all these new ridiculous fees we're going to charge you for people
Mm-hmm.
downloading your fucking game.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't bother to elaborate anything about like how free games or charity games or game bundles are affected.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just had to go like all these, they just had like a wave of replies on Twitter. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? This makes no
Mm-hmm.
sense. How I just have to drop my game now. And then they just had to like go through and copy paste these fucking responses into every single Twitter response,
Incredible.
because everyone just like called out their terrible marketing strategy, their terrible public relations strategy
Yeah.
all at once. And so I don't know why they couldn't just like, if they're going to force this change that's going to fundamentally affect their business ecosystem, why wouldn't they just take the time to put out a statement that's more like favorable, I guess, or more comprehensive, and avoid all these terrible controversies around it? It's still
Yeah.
very controversial, but it's not as bad as initially foreseen, where like, because like the initial reaction was like, everyone was like, what if my game gets pirated? And they had no disclaimer about piracy, or like,
Yeah.
what if my game gets downloaded multiple times by the same person?
Mm-hmm.
They have a new clause about like one time per user instead of like one time just pure installation now.
Mm-hmm.
So initially the response was just horrible, but I mean it's gotten slightly better. It's still a terrible decision, and it's going to be negatively impacting the industry and all these developers that are using this critical engine. It's no
Yeah.
longer going to be a financially viable option. So I think Unity is shooting themselves in the foot, but also they're shooting a lot of these developers in the face at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of like not good for anyone at all.
Well, I guess it's good for the executives that make the decision.
Yeah, but I think like
Fun fact: the CEO of Unity is the ex CEO of Electronic Arts, or no, is it Activision or Electronic Arts? It's one of those two shitters.
there we go. Well, but I mean it's if a bunch of developers just decide like, okay, we're all going to migrate to Unreal, then it's like, you know. But I guess they're betting that people won't because,
Yeah, he was EA.
you know.
That's
There
some
you go,
level of
that makes
poetry
sense.
right there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, because then it's just like Hollow Knight probably can't afford to do that, but like, I could imagine a world where something like Pokemon or Genshin Impact, like, you know, they take a hit to like is it going to be cheaper for them to migrate to a different engine or just decide to like make an engine in-house and then like not have to pay the new set of fees, or are they just going to like say, okay, like we'll take that cut, you know what I mean? um
There's basically no reason to make an in-house engine anymore. It
mhm
made sense like 10, 15 years ago when assets were much less complex and
mhm
compatibility was much easier to guarantee.
mhm
But now when you have stuff like Unreal Engine, Gorilla Engine, and other stuff like that, it's
mhm
just very straightforward to use, and
mhm
licensing is pretty reasonable, I'd say. There's a reason everyone's using Unreal Engine nowadays. It's just an extremely simple platform to use and unify, and also makes it much easier to bring on talent from other teams onto your team, and
uh
just everyone's already familiar with the same tools.
right, there's like a fluidity and like a yeah, like a
There's
universality to
there
it
that's not.
for
I'm
convenience.
not discounting in-house engines entirely. That we've seen some really good ones, like the Fox engine. I'd say is like pretty robust, and it's disappointing that it was only used for like one game and then like a couple
That's
soccer games that Konami made
that's
after MGS5.
right. Okay, that's Kojima. Okay. Got it. I knew that was familiar from somewhere.
Yeah, and now Kojima Productions is just using the Gorilla engine, which is made by the guys that made Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different engines in circulation, and I think less and less now. I mean, like even 5 years ago, it was already we were kind of already in a situation where in-house engines were falling off in terms of their practicality,
Mm-hmm.
especially with how long the production cycles for these AAA games are nowadays. It just doesn't really make sense to develop your own engine on top of that.
Totally. Yeah, I mostly remember in the PS2 era, like Star Wars Battlefront, the engine that was on. Like a bunch of other games were on that all at the same time, and they all had like a similar kind of
Yeah,
look and feel to them for that reason.
yeah, you'll definitely notice that with Unreal Engine, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the lighting and character models kind of like feel samey.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you ever
It's I think it's
played?
going to be a quality that's you go first.
Have you ever played Unreal Tournament?
I have not. I'm pretty
Oh
sure
my
that's not
god,
the same thing though.
is it not? I always thought they were related. Well, because I think the logo is the same, right?
Oh no,
Like
it is the Epic
yeah,
Games. Yeah,
it's
you're right.
related,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I thought
I'm
Unreal
dumb. That's
Tournament was
that's
like
actually
I thought they developed the engine for Unreal Tournament and then they like kept using it because it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like a really good engine or whatever.
This is like your area of expertise with the boomer games.
Yeah,
This was
just
before
like
my time.
yeah. Back when I played this on the Commodore 64, in 1987, it's great. Before the big Activision crash that spoiled gaming forever. Um, yeah, yeah. Unreal
Yeah,
Tournament rocks. It's extreme. I don't know if it still exists in any
developed
capacity.
by Infogrames.
Yeah,
It's a real
that
company. I thought
place.
that was something Donkey made up.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is like because I like am familiar with that older era. I truly don't know how much of Donkey videos, like Legends of Box Art, for example. I'm like, it really could
No,
all be
the game
real.
industry was just oh, it was just very wacky back then.
It was
Very
just
silly.
so weird because you got to remember that like what counted as like a weird aesthetic trend in the late '90s was like like I know that era is just like constant like we are just in an infinite era of like rehashing and remaking stuff from that era, but like there was also a level of like random wackiness that mainstream stuff got away with that I think is has still yet to be like sort of rehashed in contemporary culture. Um, which is why you still have the
Yeah,
moment
I
of being
mean,
like, yeah,
if you see like the box art for graphics cards today, when you go to the
mm-hmm,
like Micro Center and buy an RTX
mm-hmm,
40 series, it's like black and green, and then you go back in time 20 years when AGI was making graphics cards, and you had like this cool wizard man on the front and like a green lizard lady, and it's like whoa, graphics.
yeah, like
That was
hardware.
graphics, baby, and now it's just all very streamlined and samey.
Yeah, hardware advertising used to be insane. Um,
Yeah,
like I feel
I
like I
love
used to,
looking at like the history of like ATI graphics cards and just seeing all the promotional materials they had for them.
I feel like when I used to go to like Circuit City when I was a kid with my dad and I would be looking around at stuff, I felt like so much stuff in the store looked like it was a video game. Like it was, but like almost all of it would just be like hardware. You know what I mean? It's not like they
Yeah.
just that was just the branding back then. But yeah, I mean it's everything sucks now. No cars come in
It's also
colors
boring and
anymore.
dumb.
Everything's bad. Everything's boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went into
Games
like
are over, folks.
yeah, games are over. Honestly, I'm done. I'm tapping out. I'm like I said, I'm going back to GOG. I'm only playing computer games that came out in the mid '90s. That's the only thing I'm interested in anymore. Um,
That's about what your MacBook can handle.
that's correct. Yeah, I mean, I went back last night. I realized I decided that I'm like sort of I think done with Armored Core other than PvP for the time being. Not because I don't like it, but I just think I've like done everything with it that I want to do. And then I was like, maybe I'll play something else from my library. And then I booted up Control because I had started Control for PS4 and I was like enjoying it reasonably enough, but I was like, wow, the graphics seem like they're really suffering. And then there's like a whole
Yeah, it
thing
was
where
weird. It's like even on like high end systems with like ray tracing on ultra, it's like the graphics look like very like shimmery, I guess is the term I'd use to describe it. Like there's kind of
yeah,
like phasing in and out of reality where it's like they kind of like the half-ass the textures and some things are just as a
hmm
result are like translucent.
there's a lot
That's the
of
quality. I mean, it's I guess you could kind of describe it like an artistic choice. And
hmm
it's just kind of like this kind of supposed to be like surreal. But yeah, I just feel like the
nah.
graphics are just like not smooth enough. Like when you play it on like PS5 even, it's like you can tell it's like upscaled like crazy. It's like upscaled from like 720p to be high
Yeah,
resolution.
there's a lot of aliasing. I mean, the reason I stopped on PS4 because at that when I was playing on a PS4, I knew I was going to buy a PS5. So I was like, I'll just wait and play this on PS5 because there's a section where you get all these like live action video messages from a character, and I was watching them and I was like, oh my god, the aliasing on this is crazy. It's like it looks so bad. So then I was like, okay, I'll wait and play it on PS5.
Yeah.
And then I like watched the introduction cutscene, and it's like exactly the same video quality. And I was like,
Yeah.
dog, like, all right. I mean, I thought
Just higher frame rate.
the gameplay is pretty fun, and it like calls to mind a lot of other media that I really like. Like there's like a whole. I mean, it's obviously like it's kind of like Twin Peaks. It's kind of like The Invisibles. Like it's kind of like the X Files, whatever. There's all this like the
Reminds me of
concept behind it. I
SCP
think
a
is
lot,
cool.
even though it's not enough like evil monsters in it.
What is SCP? What is that?
It's basically like a fan like horror writing site where you like make up like it's
Oh,
kind of like institutional horror.
nice, cool, cool.
I
Yeah,
definitely
it's
feel like in the same vein as that, where it's like
mhm.
cosmological horror that's like trying to be institutionalized or
Yeah,
contained.
yeah, it's like in that realm for sure. But I mean, my other problem is that I think the lead character is like so annoying and like overacted, and I like
Yeah,
every time that she talks,
the
it's like
writing's
I
not
just
that
can't.
great.
Yeah, I can't vibe with it. But
That's definitely a PC game. I don't think it should have been on consoles. Like you look at the
interesting.
graphics on console, it's just not holding up compared to the level of fidelity they're trying to get.
But maybe I'll play it. I'll probably play the whole thing at some point. But I also have read that like
I have it. I don't know. I never found it that compelling. Like
yeah,
the premise was very cool, but it's just the writing kind of drops off hard very quickly.
and then yeah, it's I feel like it's all about just like different kind of visual moments that happen in it. But like yeah, it's similar to like movies like yeah, Barbarian Sound Studio or Beyond the Black Rainbow, where it's kind of all like
The game's too long. It's just there's not enough of the cool stuff happening compared to just endless shooting
yeah,
sections.
it basically is like there's nothing that you don't see in the trailer that's not like that you gain from like actually playing the game. And then I booted up the Demon Souls PS5 version, which like we
Yeah.
haven't really talked about this, but now is that considered a remaster or a remake? Is it like it because it's kind of all done from
Uh,
scratch, right? Or the
it is a
gameplay is
remake.
all
Yeah.
the gameplay?
Technically,
Okay,
the
yeah,
gameplay is the same.
I started that. I like
This is
did the
actually this
whole
is actually a really good example of like talk just going back to our engine discussion. That's actually a
yeah.
very good example of like
Okay.
game engines because technically it is like the same gameplay.
hmm
I think Bluepoint did a very good job of replicating the same gameplay style within a different engine,
hmm
which is a pretty big achievement in my
hmm
opinion. Because like the original game runs in a completely different game engine, so it's like different physics,
Yeah.
different
Right.
mechanics. You
Oh.
have to program it
Huh.
completely differently. But Bluepoint did a really good job of emulating the same experience within a completely new engine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you want stuff like, you know, iframes for given attacks to be the same or whatever. Like how long does it take to roll? But yeah, I also was kind of like I got through the whole like first little level and got to the hub world, but then I probably will play the whole thing at some point, but I was a little bit repulsed by the graphics a little bit. I was just like, damn, this like it's really
You know what I'm
disconcerting
saying?
to have the gameplay be like painstakingly replicated for being so clunky and like slow the way that like Dark Souls is, but then have the graphics be like so smooth and like the character models like have these like overly
So hyper
realistic like
realistic.
talking animations and stuff where I'm just like, ugh. Something about it is uncanny valley for me, I think, where I'm just like, I would rather just play Elden Ring, where it's
That's
like,
fair.
you know what I mean? But I will go through the whole thing at some
From
point because it
Software, yeah.
seems extremely vibey, but the way it looks, it just doesn't look like a FromSoft game. I don't know how else to say it. Like,
Yep, you're right. I think that's
yeah,
the main criticism, right? It feels like, it plays like a FromSoft game, but it feels
hmm
like you're playing a Bluepoint game. Or
right,
like just, I
yeah.
don't know, like a AAA Unreal Engine game, which is not
Now,
even
what
really
else
just
did
from software.
Bluepoint do? I feel like I've played something else that they've done.
They made the Shadow of the Colossus remake.
Oh, that must be what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, which is weird because that game is
That
like,
one,
I think people say that's like very faithful to the original.
yeah, like I booted that one up. I similarly also with that one played for like 10 or 20 minutes and then was like, okay, maybe another time. But like that one really did look and like the whole visual and gameplay of it felt almost identical to the original. Like it really didn't feel like they changed much. Um, which was cool, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it was the same team that made Demon Souls remake. Just, there definitely felt like there was a bit of hyper realism there that wasn't really
Mhm.
didn't feel like it was in the right place. I
Yeah.
think the game was still really good. I mean, I haven't played the original yet. I'm planning to on
Mhm.
PC.
Mhm.
But I enjoyed it. It's a really good. It's a pretty good game. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say it's perfect by any means. Obviously, the gameplay
Mhm.
still suffers. I think if there's one thing they could have remade, it was like the shitty levels that just felt uninspired and unfinished.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think I've been kind of like I've sort of hijacked our discussion order here, but that would bring me to the next logical thing to talk about, which would be Armored Core sort of part two discussion wrapping up for FromSoft stuff. But if you want to talk about
Yeah, we're
Starfield
both.
first, we could do that.
No. There's no order. It's fine. Let's do Armored
Okay.
Core. We'll
Yeah.
get to Starfield
Let's
after that.
well, because my what I was gonna say is I was playing Elden Ring again today because ultimately that's what I like decided on. That's like I'm gonna finish up Radagon at level 1, but even just in playing the Radagon fight, I was like, this is more intricate and complicated than like anything in Armored Core 6, but that's like also not a bad
Yeah,
thing. But I did kind of
it's not a bad thing.
because initially when I watched that Donkey review and I was like, oh well, like I don't know if I would say it's like one note exactly. Like I think the skill ceiling can be kind of high. Like I had just finished doing all these challenges in Armored Core. Where I was like, oh, I'm gonna do the hard bosses like melee only. Like that'll be fun. And then I did those, and I was like, okay, this took me like a couple hours each. And then I went back to Radagon, and I was like, oh my god, it's just like so on a different level of like the like skill ceiling is like so much higher or whatever. But
Yeah, I think it's
now
kind of like
I know
poetic
you
because
have
like
thoughts on bosses that you think are annoying. So I'm curious for the juice
many
on this
thoughts,
one.
but let's just
Yeah.
tie it back into Elden Ring first.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
Okay.
Donkey's hypocrisy definitely showed a little bit with those two
Mm.
reviews or those two that comparison
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm.
Donkey was like one of the most outspoken critics of Radagon as a boss fight and like or just the
Right.
final boss in general and how
Mm-hmm.
it's like way too overly complicated. That's like one of the first things he highlighted in his Elden Ring video.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean like yeah, it is true that Elden Ring is more intricate and that's a good thing, but at the same time like people you can't have it both ways. Like you want to have more
Right.
intricate boss fights, it's got to be more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have less intricate boss fights that are easier to do, then it's going to be less engaging and less
Mm-hmm.
intricate. That's just
Mm-hmm.
how it is. You can't magically exist in this metaphysical multiverse where it's like everything is possible at once.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they're different
Yeah.
type of games. They cater to different tastes. I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy both of them. I mean I
Yep.
like the I really love the intricate movesets of Elden Ring. I think Dark Souls 3 struck the perfect balance where it was like
Mm.
you had these really well designed boss fights that were also like pretty readable for the most part, and it never felt like you were being punished for not guessing.
Mm-hmm.
In Elden Ring, there's a lot of guessing, especially in your first playthrough, and a lot of that guessing kind of just like comes down to vigor tanking, which is why so many people get filtered out towards the end of the game because
Mm-hmm.
the vigor tanking skill is up hard, and most people are not building properly to have the appropriate amount of vigor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing they give you Morgoth's Rune like right before you get to mountaintops, because like Morgoth's Rune is like a 25% HP buff.
Yeah, right.
I think most people in the first playthrough kind of need that because most people are sitting on like 40, 45 vigor by the time they get there,
Mm-hmm.
which is not enough. Like if you don't have Morgoth's Rune on, you need to have like 55, 60 vigor for the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's also especially appropriate once you do rune level 1 and you realize, hey, all these bosses are actually really not that fun when you're getting killed in one hit by all of them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, weirdly, yeah. I mean, I think it's all about like Armored Core. I think there's like a skill like floor or something, and then Elden Ring, the ceiling is like too high or something like. Because like Elden Ring, you can only make so easy, right? Like you can get over leveled, you can do this and that, you can have summons, but I think like Radagon is I think hard kind of no matter what. Like even if you're fighting him at level,
Yeah, Radagon, the end game boss,
hard.
the reason people dislike the end game so much is like most of the end game bosses are very good at punishing like summon spam kind of. They have a lot of AoE moves and a lot of wide sweeps that are harder to like punish as a group.
Yeah.
You have because you have outlaws like Millennia, and Millennia is like stupidly easy to kill with summons for the most part. You have Waterfowl, which is like the summon killer. It's like if you're trying to like just tank her and poise tank her, she's very good at pulling out Waterfowl to punish that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be keen of that, and you can't just be spamming the entire time. Because if Millennia didn't have Waterfowl, you could basically just poise tank her to death. She couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have bosses like Malekith, Radagon, Elden Beast, Godfrey, which all have crazy wide AoE sweeps, and it's like it's very good at punishing people that are just trying to tank them and grind them down with summons.
Yeah.
Which is why so many people have like criticism of the end game because it's too hard. When in reality they've just gotten accustomed to vigor tanking and summon tanking and poise tanking everything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, I basically like, I don't think that like that makes Armored Core 6 not good or not worth playing. Like I still think it's extremely fun.
I mean,
and
this is the problem we described before, right?
The whole time playing it, even I did all 3, run throughs or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem we described last week, right? Where the game is trying to cater to 2 different audiences, classic Armored Core fans and Souls fans.
Right.
Can't really do 100% of both without, displeasing one side or the other. Totally. I think the game kind of does different sides at different times throughout the game. Mm-hmm. Some missions feel very classic Armored Core. Some boss fights feel very like Souls-like in a way that's kind of inappropriate in my opinion. We'll talk about it in a second, but yeah.
Right.
The game is ultimately trying to appeal to a wide range of people with different tastes and different expectations, and it can't really do all of them fully.
Yeah, I like re-watched because I had a really fun time watching this the first time that I watched it, like many months ago. I rewatched the Vati like special where he plays like every Armored Core game, and I was sort of like thinking about how it seems like in a lot of ways Armored Core 6 like really jumps away from them in a lot of ways, like to be more Souls-like or like also just more forgiving.
Yeah,
but also
I looked at a lot of Steam reviews,
quality of life stuff in it. Oh yeah, what are they saying?
I looked at a lot of Steam reviews, and basically like the main criticism is like Armored Core fans expect like you go into a mission, you have a set loadout, a set amount of ammunition, set amount of HP. You have to get through the entire level and kill the boss fight without dying, or you have to restart. Armored Core is not like that at all. Mm-hmm. And I think the addition of like lots of checkpoints, assembly, mid-mission, repair kits, resupply, that's all in an effort to kind of like bring Armored Core up to the standards of modern gaming. Because like when you look at like its contemporary, it's like Metal Gear 5, Monster Hunter, which are also like mission-based games where you have a lot of preparation and build decision making.
Yeah,
those games offer the same amount of like modularity in how you can approach it, where you can just change things out mid-mission whenever you want. You have the supply drops, Metal Gear 5, lots of checkpoints. You have reflex mode even, which is just like an easy mode where it just tells you where you're being detected from.
Right.
Then you have Monster Hunter. It's like whenever you die, you have 3 lives, and you can go into camp and change your build whenever you feel like it. So I mean, Armored Core has obviously tried to appeal to this idea of like focusing very hard on like mecha customization to the extent that's where the main difficulty curve comes from. Can you customize appropriately for each mission and bring the right equipment? If you can, you win. If you don't, you lose. which is like that's definitely like a sort of appeal, but I'm not sure that's like really a marketable quality anymore. I think most gamers don't really appreciate that kind of design to the same extent they used to, or it's not
Yeah,
really the same level of mass market appeal that From Software and Bandai want at this point.
right. It's
So
like
I gotta admit, like I
becomes
would not enjoy this game nearly as much if I had to like restart every single time I died
yeah,
and change my build from the beginning. It's just not that interesting to me.
yeah. It's like a logistical challenge much more than like that's the skill, which I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. I could like take that or leave
Yeah.
that, but um, I mean, what I wish
Um,
almost now thinking about it is that there was like a hard mode or something where it's not necessarily
kind
like,
of. I mean,
oh, like
I feel like
not
that's kind of like
S
what the New Game
ranking.
Plus missions are.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
think I honestly disagree. I think the S ranking missions, the battle logs, and the New Game Plus missions, those are all pretty appropriate for hard mode.
that's true. Yeah, I did feel like the third time through the missions were like a pretty significant step
I
up
mean,
in
in my
terms of
opinion, I
difficulty.
think the S rank, the replay mission system is pretty perfect for people that have that criticism of like, oh, I have to, I don't have to restart from the beginning. What the fuck from software? This isn't Armored Core.
Yeah.
That's what the S ranking is. You cannot restart at any
Hmm.
checkpoints. You have to start from the beginning every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
So there's like, I think the S ranking system is perfect. It's like if people who want to have that classic Armored Core experience of like, no resupplies, no build changing. That's where you go.
Hmm.
Resupply. You go through the whole mission with the same build. You can't restart at all.
Right. You could think about that like, you know, no leveling in Souls games is like you always have the choice if you want to level or not. Similarly, like in Armored Core, you have the choice, like if you want to restart the mission or if you want to use the checkpoint, you don't have
Yeah,
to. No
I
one's
think
like,
a lot
no
of
one's
Donkey's
forcing you
criticisms
to do
basically
that.
boil down to the fact that there are accessibility options built into the game mechanics that he thinks make the game too easy, but it's like you don't have to use them. Like if
Right, you
you
don't
if you
have to
want to go
use
through the
double
entire
stun
game with
needles
tank
and
treads
double
and dual
Gatling
Gatling
guns.
guns, then that's you're welcome to, but nobody's forcing you.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing that's confusing me is like I don't know if this is just I don't want to like throw anyone under the bus or anything, but I don't know if this is specific to our Discord, but I feel like that's the only place where I'm seeing any discourse from like Armored Core fans specifically. You know what I mean? Because most people I'm talking to about it are like, they've never played another Armored Core game. They're just coming at it. They've played like Elden Ring and Sekiro, and then they're like, now they're playing Armored Core 6 because it's like the new FromSoft thing. Um, but a lot of people seem to be prioritizing like speed for bosses, where it's like, okay, I have like the double Gatling guns or I have the double Zimmermans and double stun needles, so I was able to beat the boss in like 30 seconds, which seems like basically
Well,
the
yeah, I mean,
exact opposite type of challenge as Souls, where it's like not about restrictions, it's about like going completely overboard. Um,
yeah. On the one hand, I think it's kind of the player's fault for doing that, but on the other hand, it's like the S ranking system kind of incentivizes speed to an insane degree.
it
It's like
does.
the
It's true. It's
the
true.
point system for S rank is like very heavily skewed towards speed. Like you can take tons of damage and use all your
Yeah.
ammo, but as long as you do it fast, you're probably gonna get an S rank.
I think most games are like that. Like speed. If you
Yeah,
only
and I'm not a
like
fan of
if
it.
you put all your stones on speed, then you'll probably get the S rank. Because that's like when I've
Yeah, I
watched
felt
like
it was
speed
kind of
runs for
like
Sonic, for example. Yeah, it's always like it doesn't matter that they didn't get any rings. They did the level so fast that they still got the highest rank possible.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I kind of that's one of my main criticisms with the replay system is like
Hmm.
why would you incentivize speed so heavily and not put like a timer or like any indication of what the time requirement is
Yes.
to get an S
Yeah.
rank?
Hmm.
It just
Hmm.
feels kind of arbitrary.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
Um,
it's one of my problems with the game is the whole balancing system and how it kind of just presents accessibility as like a core mechanic of the game.
hmm.
I definitely think it's good to have the options that are like making the entire game super easy. But on the other hand, I would also like to see a bit more build variety. And I think they could have achieved that by making lightweight builds faster,
Hmm.
making the automatic weapons that are not just Gatling guns do more damage, which they did. Like
They
2 weeks
did.
later, after the game's already been out and everyone's already beaten it, they've buffed assault
Hmm.
rifles. So good job from
Hmm.
software.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they've also just nerfed like the most central bosses, I guess. Like, I don't want to talk too much about spoilers because we're like pretty early into the episode. I want people to have to click off right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, some of my favorite bosses in the game have been nerfed
Now,
by
which
a
ones
pretty
did they nerf?
significant degree in
The
terms of like
first three, or
I don't
is it
want
more than
I don't
that?
want to spoil them, but it's like the first major boss and then the end
Wait,
boss of
can
chapter
you
4
message
are
them
the
to
ones
me?
they've nerfed.
Message them to me in chat.
Sure.
Or no, I'll
I'll
just
just
Google
write
it.
them
I'll
down.
Google it. You don't have to do it. I'll Google it.
That's okay. I'm already typing it.
Okay.
Fighter Cell Tube. But yeah, it's like
Oh,
it's weird to
really?
me because like those
Okay.
are some of my favorite bosses in the game, and it's
Yeah.
like the ones that are like really egregious in my opinion are just have not been touched at all.
Right. I know the one you
So it's like,
specifically
why
don't
would
like,
you
which I
nerf like
guess.
the really good ones?
Hmm.
I really dislike the final boss. It's like in my opinion, that's like a D tier boss fight in my opinion,
The like true final
minus like
boss.
the
You mean
storytelling. Yeah, the true
like
final boss.
playthrough
I mean, I
through?
also just
Yeah.
like the final boss of the first playthrough, but that one's not nearly as
Which
bad.
one do you mean? Like which choice?
The one that starts with A.
Oh. Oh yeah. I like that boss.
I'm not a fan of
But
the shield. I'm not a fan of the shield at all. Like, why would you have such a tanky boss fight and then also put a shield on it?
I mean,
She already moves
for
around so
me
much, and it's like,
for sure. I mean, doing it melee only, like it made me realize how one dimensional the first phase is. Um,
yeah.
but
And I just like that
I
boss fight and
yeah.
also the true final boss fight are both like really dumb in terms of like how insane the movesets are vis-a-vis like the fact you don't have iframes. It's like it kind of
Yeah.
feels like From Software's design is kind of clashing against itself, where they want to have iframes for these boss fights, but they can't give it to you because it's Armored Core. You can't have iframes in an Armored Core game.
I
It's like I
do
feel
think
like
so. I think
some of these
some of the
boss
melee
fights could
attacks
use
actually do have.
iframes.
I think some of the melee attacks actually do have iframes in testing. Uh, but
That
maybe
would make
it's just
sense, like because some of them really need
yeah.
it. It's like the hitboxes are so wide. How do you get out of range in time?
Yeah, it might just be that I was like standing in the right place. I'm not sure, but I
Yeah,
do agree. I agree with you that the third final boss is just like very silly and like
it's so bad.
it
Why
basically.
would
I
they put
mean,
this boss at? It's like first of all, they have this first phase, which is just completely pointless. You don't need it. It's already like the second phase is already so long in terms of how long it takes to kill.
yeah,
Why the fuck would you make a first phase and then let alone why would the second phase have these two massive fucking pine cones floating in the background that are just
yeah.
constantly pulling your lock on away from the actual boss?
I
It's
guess
just
I
it's
didn't
bewilders
experience
me.
I didn't experience that issue, but that's because like the build I was running is like a very airborne type of guy, so I just sort of stayed with the main guy like far away from the rest of the action, but I could see if you weren't doing that it would be like completely ridiculous. And I mean, it's
My
also
build is very lightweight, very jumpy around a lot, and it was really tough to maintain lock on. I just constantly, even when I
Mhm.
wasn't touching the left stick or my mouse in this case, I just get or right stick, I get pulled towards
hmm.
one of the other major sources of camera lock that was not relevant to the actual fight at all, minus like a couple attacks that were like very easy to
Interesting.
dodge.
Yeah, I didn't. I guess I didn't. I didn't have that issue, but I
It
could
kind of
see
just
if
felt
I
like,
had like yeah, I could see it being a
you
problem
go.
for sure. And it's also just unnecessary because then it's like, in my experience, I didn't have any like my like the ally just fights the like the helper bosses and then I fight the main boss. So I'm just like, why even
I hate
bother
that so
with
much. You like, why
like
would they
why
have this
even bother
person
with
show up to
having
help
any
me
of
if she's
them? You know
literally
what I
going to do
mean?
nothing to contribute to the actual
Yeah.
fight?
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating.
I
Anyway, the
yeah, I
storytelling of
basically
that fight
just
was actually really good. I really, really liked the last
yeah.
ending and like how the build up
Oh
to it
yeah.
works.
Oh, it's so
It
much
was
fun. It's
like, in my
so
opinion,
classic
pretty
like
close to the best
cyberpunk.
From Software story.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was
I
cool.
really appreciated that.
I
Anyway,
yeah.
I would have liked
The
a more satisfying boss fight to end it. It's disappointing the fact
mhm.
that they try to force these like huge like Souls type boss fights onto you, but not give you the tools to properly deal with them in a satisfying
Well,
way.
yeah, and there's also like a lot of. I mean, this is like I don't weirdly I mind it less in Elden Ring and like, but I felt like in this one the amount of reuse that happens at the end in all the end missions, I was just kind of like, come on, guys, like really, like that's what
I'm
you
okay
got for
with
me,
it. I
like
mean,
yeah,
I never felt like I guess the upside of having like simple enemies compared to FromSoft games is like you never really have to
hmm
focus on them too much.
hmm
Because in a Souls game, if you see a reused enemy, you know what the moveset is. You know how long it takes to deal with it. You know how
yeah,
many like turns it takes to kill them.
hmm
And in Armored Core, it's just like shoot them twice, boom, they're dead. So it never feels like the reuse is like particularly
no,
like
not like that.
frustrating or
I meant
time
with like
wasting.
I meant with bosses and mini bosses, not with like enemies.
Yeah.
Enemy reuse is fine. That's
Well,
I
it
don't
kind of
care
just
about
a
that.
lot of the bosses are just like Armored Core fights, which is like I get it. That's kind of like what the series is
hmm
about.
hmm
These Armored Core duels, but like once you know what the weapons they're using are, it's pretty easy to predict.
No, I
There's only
liked
a couple
those.
Armored Core fights that I felt like are
I'm talking about
genuinely
when it's like the
unique
unique
and
bosses
challenging.
that get reused, specifically in one of the endings where it's like Well, and like whatever. We could once we're past the point where we can do spoilers, we can have a different conversation about this where I don't have to be like goose
We'll
stepping
probably do
around
spoilers
saying the names of anything, but
next episode because I think that's a pretty
yeah,
good
right.
buffer for people to have finished the
Okay.
game by then.
All right, so we'll return to it, but yeah. Yeah, I just like but I did have a really fun time like doing the challenge fights. Those were like those felt like very rewarding to like figure out. Um so I will say like but then I thought about it and I was like this even like the easiest boss at level 1 in Elden Ring is so much harder than like, you know, the like last two
Kind of. I
bosses
mean,
in
I feel like
Elden
some
Ring
of
or
them were
whatever.
harder than Elden Ring bosses just because a lot of the difficulty just comes from luck for me. I guess you had a different experience than
Mm,
I did with this because a lot of
mhm.
the bosses just generally felt like, waiting for them to not do the moves that kill you because you can't dodge them in time. Or just, get lucky
Yeah.
with how many hits they do. And so you have enough health to survive the ending, like the phase 2 transitions where they just pull out the shittiest, like, one shot moves ever and kill you.
Yeah, I guess so. I
Why
mean,
is that?
there's some of the dodges are just so specific and difficult, and that's where it reminds me a little bit of like I don't know. There's basically like multiple bosses that just have like Comet Azure, where it's like the same window for dodging,
Yeah.
and if you do the intuitive dodge timing, you will get hit and lose half your health, and if you have to like wait, but not wait too long after the like siren goes off, and then you can avoid
A
it.
lot of the
But
bosses just feel like Renala without iframes, and it really frustrates me at some points.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. Or you're just like mashing square to like hope you get it at the right time or whatever. But um,
Yeah. And also just like I feel like there's a lot of inconsistency in terms of like ACS overload. Like the stagger mechanic is so central to how you do damage in the game. It
mm,
just feels like
hmm
there's never a guaranteed window for how long the stagger lasts. Sometimes bosses take like 5 seconds to get out of it. Sometimes they take half a second.
yeah, and then some
I
of them
guess it
you can
depends on what you break them with and what you hit them with
yeah,
afterwards, if you even
and
have
you
time
can
to
like
do that.
you can just extend it for so long on some bosses too. Like there's a couple where like
Yeah.
you can just one cycle and it's like
Yeah.
really
One of the third
stupid.
boss I listed, like that's like the chapter 4 end boss, is like, in my opinion, that's like one of the most vulnerable stagger bosses because it has so little. My Discord fucking
Hello?
crashed.
Hold
My
on.
Discord
I
crashed.
lost you.
My Discord crashed. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, my camera got turned off. From now on, we're not going to do
Gamers
these episodes in
works
Discord. We're just going to use like Google Meet or something.
sure. Gamers were
I'm
experiencing
done with
technical
Discord. The voice
difficulties.
call is so bad. Anyway,
Yeah,
we're going to cut this part out, but yeah, you're still recording, right?
I am. Yeah, I didn't stop.
Cool.
Um, yeah. Sorry, what were you saying about the chapter 4 boss?
I the chapter 4 boss is like so vulnerable to stagger, and it's like because
Mm-hmm.
it has like such a low stagger bar because of like, it's
Mm-hmm.
balanced around the fact that it flies around forever and it's really hard to hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you actually stagger it, you can just take away like 2/3 of its health bar very quickly with the right weapons. I
Or
think the
100%
game's
of it.
balance is
Uh,
very, yeah, sometimes depending what you're using.
mm-hmm.
The game's balance is very much skewed towards impact damage because impact damage does like
Yes.
insane amounts of stagger compared to like energy weapons.
Yeah, for
Why
sure.
bother using
Which
energy weapons? It just doesn't feel worth it to me.
makes it feel like well, yeah, I mean they're good for like PvP, but in PvE, that's what makes it feel so much like Sekiro or whatever, or like a later Souls game that has stagger, where it's like, okay, yeah, like that's you certainly can build not around impact, but it is like kind of that's like the delete button for most bosses or whatever.
Yeah, there's normally an upside to not using impact damage. It just feels like it's why would you bother just like chipping them away when you can just stagger them and take away half their health bar in one stagger?
Well, I mean, in the example of that chapter 4 boss, the defense is so low that for melee only, actually, I like the
Oh
first
yeah, I beat it with
the
laser
first
weapons
type
just
of
fine.
build.
I'm
Like,
just saying like
yeah,
it's still stupidly easy to use impact damage anyway.
it
The
definitely
option is
is
still
like easy
viable,
mode for sure.
especially
Um,
now because it's like they nerfed the. First of all, they nerfed the damage it deals with its sword attack, which in my opinion is a good thing. Those sword attacks were crazy and how they tracked you and how much damage they
yes,
did.
the third one
But
specifically, the
then
tracking seemed like
yeah, it's annoying.
extrasensory perception for how it was figuring out where you were going to go next. Uh,
It felt like it was cheating, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was that, and then it also nerfed like the animation windows, so it's like easier to hit in between its own attacks. Which, in my opinion, is like that's going a bit too far into the easy territory because like that was the main difficulty curve was finding openings to hit it. Now you kind of just wait for it to attack, and then you have a huge opening to hit it after. Anyway, a lot of people on Reddit are complaining about these nerfs because they feel like it's taking the accomplishment out of the game, especially with like the chapter 1 end boss and chapter 4 end boss are like my favorite bosses in the game by a long shot. The other bosses don't really match up in my opinion, but now I haven't tried them yet with the new nerfs. They might be too easy now, so they might be down a couple spots because of that.
Yeah, I mean, they did make Radon harder again, I think, right?
Did they?
Didn't they like make him easier and then they went back to making him a little bit harder?
No, I've never seen a patch in Elden Ring where a boss got buffed. I think it's only ever been nerfs.
I see.
The only thing they nerfed about Radon was the hitboxes. It's like it's harder for him to hit you.
I see. Gotcha.
I don't think they ever adjusted the damage. They just made it easier. And most of the buff nerfs to bosses have just been like indirect through like buffing the player, giving I think like light roll buffs in 1.06 were like the biggest change for PvE.
Right.
Light roll just makes the game stupidly easy, Anyway, it's kind of a necessity for some bosses on rune level 1 in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, kind of, because like you had Bloodhound Step before 1.06 too, so it was balanced, I guess. Anyway, that was our whole FromSoft section. We want to move on now?
Sure, yeah. I guess I would just say, I think I was talking a little bit about PvP last time we recorded, and I definitely I mean, we've already had this conversation where like there needs to be sort of like meta balancing by the community or whatever, but I definitely like I've been fighting people who have like min-maxed builds, and I'm finding that it's very doable to still beat them even if I don't have a min-maxed build. So I do feel like PvP is like so cool in this game, and definitely like I'm way more excited about it than like Elden Ring PvP, for example. So that's all. That's my only.
I haven't really gotten into mechanics yet. Yeah, I think the main source of skill ceiling for this game comes from Assault Boost. Because like you can just do an insane amount of movement tech with it in terms of like how you approach people and how you put aggro them, which is way better than just like quick boosting. The main problem for me with like the meta right now isn't that like the meta is overpowered. Everyone knows that. The minions are just crazy good. Stun guns are crazy good. You take tank treads where you just fly away and spam missiles at people are pretty much unbeatable. I guess the main upside is that people that use those things haven't really put a lot of attention into the core mechanics. They haven't really put any effort into learning the skill ceiling for PvP.
Yeah.
So they're still very beatable right now. I think as the meta progresses, people are going to get more familiar with using those meta builds in oppressive ways, at which point they're going to become unbeatable by non-meta setups. So right now it's okay. It's okay for FromSoft to take their time patching the game and balancing it. So I don't have any immediate complaints about that. But yeah, if two players of equal skill level fight each other and one person's using Zims, the other isn't, then yeah, it's no question.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the most part, you can still get away with with using off meta and just using like bad stuff, but like yeah, I think as the game gets older and more people are experienced with it, it's gonna become harder to do that.
Yeah, definitely having a lot of fun in PvP with like right hand is just punching, and then left hand has melee weapons, but then your back right weapon is the like spread grenade launcher or whatever. That's like
that's not off meta. That's like meta. The punch combo is pretty meta right now. I'm not even gonna lie.
Really? That's crazy.
I've seen that set up on YouTube. That's like insane.
It's so much fun.
I mean, it's not meta in the sense that like you have to hit someone with it first, but I mean once you do hit them with it, they're just dead.
It's insane. Punching.
I can see why you would enjoy that.
Yeah, it's like it.
They're going to patch that, guaranteed. That is getting patched out of the game very fast.
Because you can repeatedly punch so fast, and it does an insane amount.
Yeah, you can stagger them for like 3 hits, and then hit them with a pile bunker, and it just kills them.
All right, that's enough armored core. Okay, no more.
Okay,
the core has been armored.
Most of our audience does not care about armored core PvP, but yeah. Anyway, it's a fun game. Play it. Starfield. I have mixed feelings about this one. I mean, we could talk all day and night about all the controversy about the game's optimization and its mechanics and what they promised versus what they delivered.
You know what I've noticed?
We'll touch on that for a little bit. I don't want it to be like the whole focus of this segment, though.
I don't know if this is just YouTubers or if it's just gamers specifically, but gamers love making YouTube videos that are like, Bungie lied. or this isn't Bungie. Like Bethesda lied. They lied to us. They love saying that companies lie. I feel like do you feel like that's unique to gamers and like game media people?
I I mean, it kind of is. I mean, like I think it also applies to movies a lot, in terms of
Okay.
marketing versus like
Yeah.
reality. But it's less of a problem in
Mm,
movies because when you see a movie that like offers something different than what it's marketed, and it's just wastes 2 hours of your time.
mm,
When it's a game, it's like you're buying it for certain expectations about what you're going to get out of it, and it's like 60
yeah.
$70 buy-in. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a bigger deal there. I mean, I wouldn't discount all the claims about whether or not companies marketing things and providing different things is a
Mm,
problem.
mm,
It definitely is. It definitely is obnoxious in the way you described,
yeah.
and repetitive.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, companies should be held accountable for marketing certain things and not delivering on them.
yeah.
I never think Bethesda did anything where like we're going to have this feature and they didn't deliver that. They definitely have delivered on
Right.
everything they explicitly promised.
Mm,
I guess the core problem comes from the fact that like the main premise of this game is like space exploration, right? That's why people are
mm,
playing it,
mm,
and it's not really that. It's like Bethesda RPG talking to people with really bad facial animations and like tons of items in every environment
mm,
and shooting raiders for like hundreds of hours to level up, and then
yeah.
like you sometimes go to different planets to do that. There's nothing.
Right.
There's nothing else in between. It's just like Bethesda, Skyrim, Fallout in space.
Right. The being in space part doesn't actually change like how the game functions. Like
It's
space
not. There's
does
not a lot
not
of depth
become
to
a
it. You
big
have you have
conflict.
a very
Yeah.
like generic like spaceship kind of traversal thing where you can shoot at space pirates that are attacking you, and there's
Yeah.
asteroids, and you loot destroyed salvage ships.
Yeah.
There's no way to like fly between planets manually.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just use the
Mm-hmm.
map to fast travel between them, and like
Yeah.
there's nothing really to do in space. It's just space is just a buffer between each role playing zone, which
Right.
is pretty dumb in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. It's sort of like an anti-open world thing, or it makes it so that it's like a bunch of different little open worlds. Um,
Yeah, it's one.
I
It's like
guess
a textbook example of like open world for the sake of open world when it probably doesn't need to be.
I was thinking about how maybe the developers, when they decided to not make it so that you fly between the planets, maybe they were experiencing star fear instead of
The main
Starfield, where they
problem
were
is that
afraid
like
of dealing with the stars.
the main reason they don't offer you the ability to like manually land on planets is like
Mm-hmm.
each planet only has like a couple square kilometers of playable area. The rest of it's
Of
like out
course.
of bounds.
Right.
So they want you landing in one spot. Like that's where the map is for this planet. We put a
Mm-hmm.
couple settlements here and there and some things to scan and like a
Yeah.
city occasionally. Everything else is just barren nothingness. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
So it's like they don't want you landing on planets. They want you landing where the stuff is happening.
Well, it
So it's
also
like
seems
why
like a
even bother? Like
it seems like a problem of scale too, right? Where it's like, how big do you actually make the planet model?
yeah.
How long do you actually have it take to like get out of the atmosphere? There's
I
sort
mean,
of like
that's
a
kind of like one of the core features of the game's aesthetics, right? Because if you didn't have the bigger planets, it would just feel like
mm-hmm.
hollow, which it already does. But like, if you like the barren, like randomly generated planet environments are like so boring to look at and walk around in. It's just
Mm-hmm.
rocks, basically. Which it's trying to be realistic here, so I get it.
Yeah.
But it's like if you didn't have like the backdrop of like planets in the distance and stars and suns, it would just not feel very impressive. So
Yeah.
I can
I
understand
guess
why
like
they have the big planets, but it's like there's no reason that the game should have ever had this whole space exploration dynamic, in my opinion, because it just
mm-hmm.
doesn't really add up to anything meaningful.
Yeah. Right. It
Anyway,
becomes just like
there's that problem,
a setting thing.
and then there's also
Yeah.
kind
Go
of just
ahead.
problems with like the UI and the quality of life
Mm.
features, where like every time you want to fast travel between planets, which you have to do like once every 10 minutes to go to a new mission, sometimes like once every 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how widespread the mission is. It's like you can't just like
Mm-hmm.
open your map and go there. You have to like open your map, fast travel back to your ship, take off with your ship. You have to open the star map and then like tab out 3 times to get out to the map of the galaxy, and then find the star system you're looking for. Zoom back in and find the planet you're looking for. Mark for landing.
Mm-hmm.
Then activate fast travel. Then activate your grav drive so you can fast travel there on your ship, and then land once you get into that solar system. It's like my god.
Okay.
There's just so many
Wow.
steps to do things in
Just
this
so you
game.
can
It
like
just
go talk
doesn't
to
feel
someone or
necessary. It's just so tedious.
whatever. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, say it again.
Right. Just so you can go talk to someone, presumably, like talk to an NPC.
Yeah, just so you can like find
Press
like you're looking for a
thing.
person, and it's like this little breadcrumb trail of things across the galaxy to find them. It's like just takes forever.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a whole lot of nothing in
I
my
guess like
opinion.
in
I guess, I mean, it's tempering expectations. We kind of knew
Sorry.
this was what happened going into the game from like pre-release footage and reviews. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're just lagging a little bit, so I think you're a bit
Mm-hmm.
delayed. It's fine. But yeah, just like I
Okay.
expected this. It's still disappointing because like I think No Man's Sky kind of sold me on the idea of like a game where you can just like seamlessly fly between planets. Like that system is like
Yeah.
very engaging and fun. But then the game doesn't really offer much in terms of
Mm-hmm.
story or characters or depth in terms of its mechanics. So I would have loved to have a game with like No Man's Sky level of exploration combined with Bethesda's level of
Mm-hmm.
like character role playing, which they have. I mean, the
Yeah.
characters are they're there. They're very good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Mm-hmm.
just like why can't you just do both? I can
Mm.
understand why they
I
didn't
see.
do both, but it's like they want to sell you on this idea of like there's 1,000 planets you can explore them all. It's like, but why would you? There's nothing there. You scan for some iron, you mine the iron with a laser drill, then you fuck off somewhere else to actually do the quest lines.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I guess like in reading people talking about it, I have not played it because I don't have either of the systems that I would need to play it. Like what I've what I seem to be reading is that yeah, it's like not so much an issue of like performance issues like or glitches or the game not being finished. It's more like those seem more legitimately nitpicking. But what I do seem to be hearing is like well what seems to be the issue is like this balance of immersion, right? Like this immersion becomes like the big question here is like because I've seen people complain about like it takes too long to like walk to the desert. It takes like there's a whole issue with like getting ammunition. Like there's an issue where like if you do like a whole quest line and you become like very famous somewhere or whatever, you become like high notoriety with a certain faction and then you go to a different planet, like no one knows who you are there and you sort of start over. So there's like these questions of like how much immersion do you want and like in what ways does the game like satisfy that and in what ways is it sort of lacking like I don't know, do you have like
Yeah, I
thoughts on
mean, it's kind of weird. They
yeah.
chose to focus very heavily on certain things while
Mm-hmm.
kind of discounting other things. I'll just give like a quick example. It's not really related to the role playing at all. Where it's
Yeah.
like you have like this really good item physics system where like you've seen videos on YouTube where people like stuff like 1,000 potatoes into their spaceship and then they open up the hatch and all the potatoes spill out like super realistically. So they've
Cool.
clearly put a lot of thought into the physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then you have this city called New Atlantis, which is like this huge city on this planet in Proxima Centauri system. It's like one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest cities in the game, the biggest city in
Mm-hmm.
the game, and it's like the first place you go to, and it's like they have
Mm-hmm.
all these ponds and lakes you can jump into. They have a skyscraper right next to this big lake you can jump into. It seems like the most obvious thing to do. You jump into the lake, you
Mm-hmm.
hit the water, and your inertia just flattens out the second you touch it. It's like you're wearing 17 life jackets. It's like there's no actual like water physics. So it's like
Uh-huh. Interesting.
it just feels so disconcerting the fact that they would spend so much effort on certain parts of the game in terms of providing immersion and depth, and then other parts they just completely ignore it. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like a very unfinished package in that sense.
Right. So in that sense it does feel a little bit like just an issue like if they had more time, they would have just like actually gone in
Yeah, I
and
mean, of course you can
yeah,
say that like about any game. Like if you
sure.
just add more physics, add more depth,
Mm-hmm.
add more stuff to do on the planets. Of course you
Mm-hmm.
can do a lot with time. The game's already been delayed once by like 1 year, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't really realistically expect them to spend more time on it, considering they already have like Microsoft's other projects like Elder Scrolls
Mm-hmm.
6 on their plate.
Ooh.
They're probably going to spend a lot of time working on that. They're making updates for stuff like UI improvements,
Mm.
because a lot of the stuff to make the game playable has to do with like modding, where the
Mm-hmm.
UI that you use to like sort your inventory and travel between star systems
Mm-hmm.
is also convoluted and obtuse. That you
Mm.
kind of need modding to make it playable in the long term. So
Yeah.
I think they're going to address stuff like that. We talked last week about how they're doing DLSS versus FSR with the upscaling,
Right.
and so now they're kind of just like adding an NVIDIA DLSS in after the
Hmm.
fact, which is good. I mean,
Yeah.
gamers are happy about that one, but it's like, why couldn't they just do that before the game came out? It's like
Yeah,
such a
right.
simple thing. It's not simple, but it's like, come on, everyone wanted it. Why do you have to
Yeah.
wait until the game's already come out? It's like, oh, we're listening to feedback now. We've heard your thoughts. Thanks, players. It's like
Maybe they
everyone
like
said that before the game already came out.
maybe they made enough sales for the other brand
No, it's
for people
Bethesda. They knew they
anticipating
were
it.
going to make a lot of sales. Everyone
I
bought this
see.
game.
I see. Okay.
Anyway, and yeah, the game is just has some optimization problems, obviously, because it's like running on like a 20-year-old engine, basically.
Yeah.
It's held together with duct tape, so that's
Mm-hmm.
a shame too. Anyway, yeah, the game I haven't played too much of it. I've only played like about 5 to 8 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still getting to the second faction, so I've only seen the first faction so far. I wasn't really impressed with the amount of depth there.
Mm.
I think Fallout 4 did a better job of condensing the world enough to like meet different people fast. And I wish
Interesting.
that the biggest city that you go to, New Atlantis, it's like two or three meaningful spots where interactions actually happen. The rest of it's kind of
Mm.
just like a facade of like just
Uh,
people walking around and doing nothing.
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of disappointing, I guess. I'm more excited to see the second city because it looks more like in depth and condensed to a level I'd be more comfortable with.
Yeah. Hmm. Interesting.
Anyway, yeah, they have the whole aspect of like updates and mods to try to address the things that the updates are not addressing yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. I'm glad that Bethesda's updating the game to address community feedback. Just like a lot of these changes are so obvious that they seem like, why didn't they just think of them before the game came out, or just play test it
Right.
more to
It's like,
find these things out before they released
yeah.
it?
Hmm. Yeah. They probably like were already
Anyway,
working on them
yeah,
before they
I think
feedback.
that like yeah, a lot of the reviewers kind of like sold it on the fact that, or I guess Bethesda sold on the fact that you'd have this insane level of exploration that was not there. But people who want to play the
Hmm.
game for like a Bethesda RPG are probably not going to be disappointed because you know the level of role playing there is pretty solid. There's a good level of dialogue depth and like choices and
Hmm.
persuasion and skill checks and stuff like that. So it feels like Bethesda game in that regard. And I
That's
guess the
fun.
facial animation thing is also pretty disappointing because like I think what they should have done, in my
Right.
opinion, is have the main quest have like actual hand animated cutscenes or like not even cutscenes, just like hand animated facial dialogue.
Hmm.
And then like the side quest stuff be like AI generated animation because the animation is very jarring. The characters' faces are not lifelike at all,
Hmm.
which was okay like 5-10 years ago for Fallout 4 and Skyrim.
Hmm.
Not so much now. Like I feel like if you're making a game today that's like about a story, you're trying to tell a story in your game, and you're not putting in the effort to immerse the player in that story, then it kind of feels like it's wasted effort, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway,
Um,
yeah, lots of criticisms, but basically, you know, it's a Bethesda game, so that's what you want, then you're going to get it.
hmm. Hmm. Maybe I'll play it this weekend, and then next time we record, we can talk about it so that we have more material. But no, I
Yeah,
am
this is one of your games while I'm on my Starfield grind.
true. Yeah, I will play. I mean, it comes
Because I know
out
you're going to be
next
finishing
week,
up
so
Elden Ring. You're going to want another Souls like game, right?
for sure. I mean, I'll probably play it before I finish RL1. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
Radagon, I'm getting there, but I think Placidus X will take months. So I'm like not ready
It
to
did,
finish
yeah, it
that
was
yet.
definitely
So
the longest one. I think
yeah,
50% of my time on that boss was just the run back. You get
yeah.
there, you
Oh
run back for like
God.
5 years, you die in 10 seconds, do it again.
I'm very spoiled from Armored Core 6 now, where like, oh, you want to restart? You fucked up. You want to restart the mission? Okay, just press one button and then it's a single loading screen. But Elden Ring is
Whenever I'm
like,
really like
you
Armored
gotta
Core 6, I'm
watch the
just like, I got
whole.
hit by the boss once, like, no, restart from checkpoint, go from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. The Elden Ring's like, okay, you have to die to the boss. You have to watch the whole death animation. You have to wait for it to load. You have to run back to the fog wall. It's like, wow. Anyway,
You got to
whatever.
pull the elevator back up.
God, my life is
You got to make
so
sure you jump
hard.
off the
It's
cliff the right
insane.
angle so you don't fall too far.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
like the
yeah, well,
one
Placidus
boss
X
without a fucking
is
stake of merit gun. It's the worst run back ever.
yeah, and it's the boss that you're gonna die to like the most, especially on RL1. Um.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, Lies of
no,
P. It
yeah,
looks
Lies
really
of
interesting.
P.
I'm like, the combat seems like I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically the combat
Hmm.
seems like very like deflect heavy, like Sekiro, which I guess is
Mm.
refreshing. It's not just another
Hmm.
iframe game.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like a synthesis of Bloodborne and Sekiro, where it has like the Bloodborne enemies and art style,
Hmm.
but then not really the art style. I mean, it kind of like London, I guess. Bloodborne, yeah, English people, but like it's very mechanized. It's not really like
Victorian, like
Eldritch
kind of
Wild Beasts like in Bloodborne. Yeah,
leaning
it's
into
like
steampunk a little bit.
Victorian
Yeah.
sci-fi, World of the Worlds, yeah. With all these like huge mecha enemies. Not really mecha, that's like Armored Core, but it's like, you know, you get it. Anyway,
Hmm.
it's got that kind of style to it. And then like Sekiro
Yeah.
mechanics with this deflect that's very important. And then like stagger punishes. This seems like fun. It
Hmm.
seems satisfying. A lot of reviewers are criticizing it. They call it a flawed game. I don't know what those flaws are.
Yeah.
I imagine it's like, you know, balancing issues maybe, and also just like
Probably.
progression in terms of leveling up your character and
Hmm.
just like your health bar maybe, and also maybe area design could be a concern. The areas look pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
haven't really seen any problems yet. I'm not seeing any poison swamps from the trailers. I don't know that much about this game. I want to try it. You're going to be my
I'm
vector
playing.
to learn more about this game next week.
if there's no locked doors, if there's no doors you can't open from this side, and there's no poison swamps, then it's basically not Souls-like. It's just a difficult game. Just kidding.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I would guess difficulty balancing is probably, because I think any game that's like primarily going to be like a combat skill focused thing, like difficulty balancing is going to be like the main issue, or the main sort of like breaking point for like if it feels like a good game or not. But yes, I'll play it. I'll report back. Maybe I'll even play the demo. We'll see. Kind of have a lot going on this weekend.
Good job, Soldier. Proud of you.
Yes. Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll probably do it on the episode after the next one, because next episode is like State of Play and Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, if ever make sure to watch States of Play. I don't really understand. It's like they.
Yep.
Now from what I understand, these are independent reviews of gaming industry, and it's not a big advertisement that you watch. It's independent review board who goes over.
Jeff Keighley is famous for being a very non-profit person. He has no advertisements in any of his shows.
This is another Jeff Keighley thing.
So thank you, Jeff, for owning Sony and Nintendo. No,
himself?
It's not. I'm joking about how Jeff Keighley's like the all-seeing eye of everything in gaming now. Jeff Keighley owns
Canadian.
Nintendo and Sony. He's running both these shows, and he's going to have advertisements for the Rock's energy drink and for Genshin Impact, DoorDash, Pizza Hut promotions. I can't wait.
Okay, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
I have to go back to playing. I have to go back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on the Nintendo 3DS. All right. Okay. So
I can't wait to drop off the Battle Plus and see some new on the Battlefield and Fortnite on Nintendo Switch.
The lie of P is that we're not actually going to talk about it because neither of us have played it yet. That's the lies of P is that
the game came out and neither of us know anything about it, but I was hoping Sparkling would. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Funny Souls game. You should probably play it if you're interested in Souls-like. It seems like a really good one.
Yeah. You should. It's your fault as the listener.
I'm definitely going to play it.
Played it yet, and yeah. Okay. All right.
What the fuck? Yeah, it came out like yesterday. What are you doing? Have you not already beaten it and platted it? What the fuck, bro? Come on.
Wait. It comes out on the 19th, doesn't it? It's out already.
Does it?
Is that what you mean?
September 19th. Yeah, the reviews are out. My bad.
Yeah, the reviews are out. That's what I was. Yeah.
If you're not already an IGN reviewer just to play this game, what the fuck are you doing?
I should be an IGN reviewer, honestly. I would crush it.
Yeah, you're like an expert at this stuff.
Yeah, I think I would do a really good job.
Anyway, I have Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3. What are
let's not hang up for too long on this game we haven't played yet.
Yeah,
well, it's on PS5 now. That's the biggest update. But a bunch of people are coming into the game. No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
there could be.
My friend, one of my friends from high school DM'd me the other day and was like,
Baldur's Gate 3 will be getting crossplay, though it's not out yet.
Oh,
Makes
but
sense.
It's coming though. They're working on it.
It is coming. Yeah, maybe we should actually wait to play it together. I can be on PC, you can be on PS5.
That'd be dope as hell.
Yeah, I'm very interested in playing this game because I've always been like passively interested in trying Dungeons and Dragons, and it seems like the perfect medium to start.
Yeah, I mean, Baldur's Gate 2 Dark Alliance on PlayStation 2 was so much fun. I played that with my dad, as I think I said last time we recorded.
It's crazy to me that this game, like, this is the sequel to Baldur's Gate 2, which came out like 3 console generations ago.
Is that really how it works? Like, didn't they make a bunch of stuff in between? Like, maybe that's just the same company, but
I don't know. This is your territory.
I remember it feeling like
about these games.
Basically a perfect RPG in that it was like, well, it's not. There's no like superficial RPG stuff. Like, there's not like character creation really in the original or in the one that I played. It's like, but it is all about like stat allocation and like all kinds of different weapons and like. I don't think there's much choice in terms of like what you do in the game, like the plot or whatever. Like, I think it's kind of linear, but
I think this is like those are all like core features of this new one.
Yeah,
character creation, decision making, consequences for decisions. RPG.
Well,
stuff.
and then there is like a sense of you have a party, you have like people who do different roles. Like you can have like a rogue and a big guy with a sword and a wizard or whatever. So that element has always seemed cool to me.
Yeah. I want to be a stealth archer, like my favorite Skyrim playstyle that everyone loves. So original.
Yeah, Skyrim. He's the.
That doesn't sound right.
Well, that's on you. I think it sounds bad too. It's not my fault. uh,
Okay. Anyway, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is out on PS5 now. So we're probably gonna be playing it sometime in the next half year or so. Stay tuned for that one. I'm not sure why we're talking about it yet, but yeah, it's out. So yeah, if you're interested in PS5, Baldur's Gate 3, it's out. So go try it out.
I'll probably play that. Yeah. All right. What else do we got?
And then yeah, just the rest of the show. I mean, let's talk about Demon Souls first. I think, unless you already covered it, we think. Do we think we already covered it?
Yeah.
I guess kind of.
Yeah, we already talked about it. I mean,
it all?
I've said everything that I wanted to say, which was just that I booted it up and then was sort of like, yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling this right now.
I mean, we never finished our discussion about like remakes versus remasters. So I guess we'll just close that out by just Demon Souls is a remake. It's on a new game engine, completely built fresh from the ground up. But it feels more like a remaster because it's like the only thing they remade was the graphics and the engine, the gameplay, the enemies and the level design are all exactly the same.
Yeah,
this is the sort of game I think would benefit a lot from like new gameplay modifications, especially because like a lot of the levels are just like very painful to play today. It's insane to think about how this game almost like was like a roguelike where Miyazaki wanted you to have like corpse running as like your one chance to save your character, and if you don't get back there before you die again, you just like lose your save forever.
Oh wow, okay, interesting.
That was cut from the game. Body form and soul form is like already pretty terrible in terms of like, oh my god, my health bar is like cut in half, and also I lose like the enemies get harder because I died. That's already really stupid. It could have been so much worse though.
Okay. Wow, so this is like, yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, the difficulty in this one isn't necessarily like what differs from the later Souls games is it's not really about the bosses. It's about like just it's basically the challenges and everything else like is what makes it like
it feels like yeah, it's very much like it's kind of like Armored Core because like classic Armored Core is the same way where it's like the bosses are definitely simpler, but it's like also the challenge is getting there from like the start of the level.
I see.
There's no checkpoints in Demon Souls. You just you got to go through the whole level to get to the boss fight, or you restart.
Wow. Okay. Crazy. All right. Yeah.
How much have you played? I don't want to spoil too much of the game. I thought you finished it.
Oh, none. I mean, I got to the hub world. That's it, and then I stopped. I did like the tutorial.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And might have.
I'm sure you beat the Vanguard Demon on your first try, right?
I tried rolling an attack, but it didn't work, and I just got hit and died in one hit. So.
Wow, that's so crazy.
I know. It was like
who could have seen that coming?
I got this. I my level of skill, I'm definitely beating the tutorial boss, like no question, and then just immediately died.
He did not have that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically, I mean, Demon Souls remake is kind of a weird one because like we've had games like Resident Evil 4 remake, which is like in my opinion the quintessential game remake. It just it revamps everything about the game, the story, the characters, the levels, the enemies, the combat. Yeah. It's all just completely redone in a much more streamlined and modernistic way, which I love it. I love Resident Evil 4. It's like my favorite third-person shooter after Last of Us 2. And then Demon Souls remakes over here, just like, yep, we put some vines and stuff, and it's HD resolution, and the load times are faster now.
Right.
It's just like, why call it a remake? Just call it a remaster. But yeah, I guess it's definitely a step up from Dark Souls remastered, because that's the low. Demon Souls remake is like the low bar of remakes, and then Dark Souls remastered is like the low bar of remasters. It's like really stretching the word. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it can go both ways. It's definitely a step up over that, but it could be a lot better. I think Blue Point could have done a lot more with it.
Yeah, I'll report back when I play more of it, but I'll probably be in P land pretty soon. So, but maybe I could beat Dark Souls. Maybe I could beat Demon Souls.
Where are you going? Sorry.
Lies of P land. Lies of P. P.
Oh, Lies of P land. Yeah.
I'll be in P zone.
You'll be lying a lot in P.
I'll be peeing.
He's gonna pee himself.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, I think like the Halo remake, the Halo remaster lets you choose if you want to play with the old graphics or the new graphics, and I just think it should be like illegal to not include that in game remasters. Basically, like I think it's like
kind of. I mean, for remasters, I agree with you, but for remakes, it's a bit different. If
remakes is different.
Remastered runs on like the same engine.
Yeah.
If it runs on the same engine, then yeah, you're probably right. But for remakes, it's very different.
Yeah. No, remasters, I think that you should have the option to go.
There's no reason to include like a filter for that for Dark Souls Remastered because it's like the same game either way.
Yeah. Or like in
30 FPS versus 60 FPS. Take your pick.
Yeah, like in Final Fantasy remasters, like you can choose if you want like the old music or the new music and stuff like that. Like I just think there should be options for stuff like because I tried playing I maybe we talked about this. I tried playing the Spyro remasters, and I was like, damn, I really hate how they look when they're like redone to like try to be like more clean. They just start looking really generic when they're not like in the old graphic style. Like it kind of loses what made it feel unique. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, I love that in
I
the
like
Halo
the
one you
Resident Evil
can
4 remake because all the character designs kind of feel revamped.
that one does look really good to me, and I feel like it's more like those people who remade that like because Resident Evil 4 is like I don't want to say it's like realistic, but it's kind of realistic, and I just feel like the people who remade it like had a sense of what the original developers were going for, and like rolled with that. But then with the Spyro one, it just feels like the graphics they just like went in this like kind of different direction with it. Like it doesn't feel
Yeah,
as
it also helps
yeah
in Resident Evil because like every single person is like stupidly attractive,
right of course
like
beyond
uncharacteristically attractive for the
yeah
situation. But yeah,
true.
Japanese people love attractive white people. It's like their favorite thing to do.
Well, I mean, you're gonna put someone in a video game and have them be not hot. What are you doing? I mean, there's never been. I mean,
Yeah,
FromSoft has
I
never
love
had
the
a character
distinction between
that's
like
not
Leon
attractive.
Kennedy
You know what
levels of e-boyishness versus like Resident Evil 4 remake
I
Leon Kennedy. They're both like very different levels of masculine appeal.
mean? Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to compare them. Anyway, but then you have characters like Ashley Graham where it's like night and day. Ashley Graham's basically like a toddler in the original game.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But yeah, it's a must play in my opinion. I love that game.
Yeah, I'll play that one. I want to
Cool.
play
Let's move on
Resident Evil
to
One.
let's just close this. You go first.
Move on to which?
Never mind. You go.
No, I was just gonna say I want to play Resident Evil One, where they play an animation every time you open a door. I feel like that seems pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I've tried it. I'm not a fan. It's
I see.
not for me.
Mm.
Resident Evil 2 and onward are like, oh, at least with the remakes of 2 and 3.
Mm.
And yeah, let's extend 4. I think 4 kind of set the standard for the series going forward. And I think the team from then on out has realized that it's not really fun to just walk around opening doors and tank tread environments where you can't really aim at things properly.
Yeah, right. I've heard the aiming is
So
difficult.
yeah, I've tried Resident Evil 1. It's kind of outdated in my opinion.
Hmm. Um. All right.
There's other games I'd rather play if I just want to play like a walking game.
Okay.
Like
I
Death
think
Stranding.
the rest of the stuff on our list, I don't really know. What is AC Mirage? What is that?
Yeah, this is all just like upcoming stuff. Just like
Animal
this is
Crossing?
October releases for the most part.
Animal Crossing Mirage? Is this the Armored Core?
Animal Crossing Mirage. It's Assassin's Creed Mirage. That's the next Assassin's
Ah,
Creed game.
Assassin's Creed.
Normally I wouldn't talk about this because the last like 2 or 3 years, or even 3 to 4 years of Assassin's Creed games have all been really, really dumb.
Yeah.
With the after, so like for the first 6 main games slash like 12 spin-off games,
Mm-hmm.
they've had like the same engine, which has had like the similar action kind of hack and slash mechanics with
Mm-hmm.
like stabbing people, and it's like animation based kills. And then with Assassin's Creed Origins, which is like the one that took place in ancient Egypt, they decided to revamp the series and turn it into like an action RPG.
Mm-hmm.
So now like it kind of feels like Legend of Zelda, where it's like not really animation based; it's more just like physics based, and you hit people until they die, and then they fall over like a rag doll.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a fan. I've seen all the games. Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey, I think was the next one, and then Valhalla. All of them look really dumb. All really bloated and buggy and uninspired. And now Assassin's Creed Mirage is like the return to form for the series, where they're ditching this action RPG style and going back to classic Assassin's Creed.
Hmm.
It takes place in like Middle East. I want to say I don't remember which country.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's basically just like trying to revitalize the old style of Assassin's Creed, which I enjoyed as a kid a lot. I didn't dislike the games. Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 are pretty fun games. But yeah, I fell off the series pretty quickly once they switched over to this action RPG style. So I'm excited to see where they go with this. I mean, they could ruin it with microtransactions, which is very likely.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping this is going to be like a classic, like single player style game and not really have any bullshit gimmicks added to it. Knowing Ubisoft, they definitely
Yeah, I mean,
will, but it's nice to think about what it would be if it didn't.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard about the most recent one or whatever. It's all like you can just pay to not have to like do grinding missions or whatever.
That's
Um,
really good. It's really good game design. It's the future
yeah.
game design actually.
Uh-huh.
Just pay to not play your game.
$5 to beat Godfrey.
Yeah. And then a more exciting note, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which is like
Oh,
the
that's
next
what that
2D
is.
Mario game.
Okay. Yeah.
It looks really cool.
That looks
Because
pretty cool, yeah.
2D Mario games were my childhood, right? That was Super Mario Bros. Wii.
Mhm.
That was one of my most played games as a kid. This game seems like a really good iteration of that, where it's trying a lot of new things and not just being formulaic. Because a lot of the 2D Mario games over the past decade or so since the Wii came out have all been extremely formulaic, where
Mhm.
it's kind of just like copying the same formula they built with Super Mario Bros. Wii.
Mhm.
Just like a new coat of paint, some new enemies, new mechanics. But this one seems like a complete revamp with tons of new power ups and enemies and systems to all complement this classic style of gameplay.
Mhm.
So I'm very excited to try it out. Just seems like a really interesting game. They've done tons of promotion for this game, which is great too, because this is the sort of game that there's not really like any story element to it. So there's no harm in like showing stuff off. I don't really think people are gonna get spoiled on that stuff.
Yeah.
Just showing what sort of things you can do in this game in terms of like elephant power ups and bubble power ups and like
Right.
all these new enemy types and this new like wonder LSD trip system they have going on,
Mhm.
where all the levels just get turned on their head. All seems really cool, and it's
Well,
just like very much modular. There's no restrictions to gameplay in the sense that you can just have like, well, first of all, it had like an accessibility mode. You can play as Yoshi, which is like turns the game to easy mode where you actually can't die, and
hmm.
then it's like so that's a great option for families.
Hmm.
So let people let you can have your parents and then you have your kids playing as Yoshi, so they don't really have to get frustrated about dying at all, and you can
Mhm.
just play along together.
I'll be
There's
having my kids
unrestricted
play
co-op
as
throughout the
Yoshi.
entire game.
Mhm.
Not only split screen co-op, but also online co-op, which is amazing to see.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love the fact that this is like a classic return to form game for like couch co-op and
Mhm.
just single player fun. So I'm very excited to play this. It seems like a really good game.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, it's making me want
Can't
to
really
get a
see any way this
Nintendo.
could go wrong. I mean, if they just deliver on the fact that these power ups exist and they're in the game and there's no systems that they lied about, which I think is pretty straightforward to do at this point,
Mhm.
it'll be a really good game, no matter what.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's exciting to see it like a 2D Mario thing getting like a shiny new like thing going on with it where I feel like yeah, it's like continuously getting like a new 3D
Yep,
Mario thing is like okay, like we you know.
it's you
And
don't want it to
also
be
it's
iterative. You want it to be innovative.
mhm. Mhm.
I guess my one gripe is like they're releasing the Switch 2 next year, and I'm wondering could they just wait to like
Ooh.
release this for Switch 2, have this be a Switch 2 game, and really jump in on on the new hardware to improve the systems.
Mhm.
Have like because like you have games like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart where like they have one of the core systems of the game is like switching between different levels with this like portal
Mhm.
system, kind of like dimension swapping system. We can like switch
Yeah.
like that because of the how fast the RAM and the SSD are.
Mhm.
I wonder, could you include stuff like that in your game, like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which is very much about like the way the levels dynamically change with the way you get
Mm.
powered up and you're
Hmm.
progressing through them. Could they implement the Switch 2's hardware into that? And to some extent, like yes, but also it's like a 2D game, so it's not really like hardware dependent. It's kind of just like design
Yeah.
dependent,
Yeah.
and it seems
It
like
might
they've
not need
pushed it
it.
to the limits of what's fun. It probably doesn't
Mhm.
need it, so it's not a big deal. It would just be nice. It's nice to think about what they could do if they had to switch to, but at this point in the life cycle of game hardware versus like 2D games, it's not really a big concern. I don't think for Nintendo.
For sure. I mean, we all know that you love games coming out exclusively for
I
the
love
most
when
recent
games come out on
generation.
last gen when it's already been
You
3 years into the new console gen. It's
yeah,
one of my favorite things in the game
yeah.
industry.
You are very pro. Uh,
I am very
yeah,
pro
we're
non-technological
putting out Metal
innovation. I
Gear
love when
Solid
technology
Triangle, and
stagnates,
it's coming out. It's going to be compatible for PlayStation 2, 3, PSP, 4, and 5.
just like the original game.
Uh
Yep,
huh.
that's what I like to see. I like gamers being included. Yeah, I mean, for Nintendo's nice because their hardware is kind of timeless.
Hmm.
They don't really try to like push the boundaries of like graphical innovation to the same extent that other studios or platforms do,
Hmm.
which works in their favor because their games end up being classic for longer. Like a classic like PS4 game is not going to seem as classic once you get to the next generation because the technology seems outdated. But
Yeah,
a 2D Mario platformer is always going to be classic because it's kind of the same technology that they've been using for the past 20 years.
for sure. Well, I think the Nintendo model is like you don't like having cutting edge realistic graphics is never the goal. It's like that bar is set much lower, so it means that the actual game itself can get like so much more attention. Um,
Yeah,
and that
that's
became
really evident in like masterpieces like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where the textures are 240p and they repaste them every 2 centimeters, so it's like looks like
uh,
you're looking at a goddamn like waffle or something. That's the sort of game I love to see because it's very immersive to play and it feels great.
you don't
I
like
love when game
Waffle
studios do
Simulator
that.
5?
So yeah, all that to say, there is some merit to the idea that the Switch and Nintendo's methodology are beneficial to game developers, but at the same time, game developers love to exploit the fact that the Switch is less powerful to
Mm-hmm.
produce like poor quality games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet,
Mm, right. It's a good
and also
counterpoint
the
for sure.
fucking mountain of copy and paste farming games we're seeing this generation on that platform.
Cozy
Which is
farming.
like, yeah, we've talked all about like these new games coming out, and it's like I looked at the release schedule for 2023, and like half the
Mm-hmm.
games coming out are like Bay Farm and like Rune Factory 3, all these fucking Nintendo games are
Uh
just
huh.
like RPGs you don't give a shit about.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is obviously lots of new stuff coming out that's exciting and innovative and interesting, and then at the same time you have a bunch of fucking garbage. So yeah, we like to cherry pick the examples that we think are interesting, but there's
Mm-hmm.
always tons of stuff that's going to be indicative of low quality or low effort.
Yeah, maybe we need to have like a month where we play only farming games and just sort of see what that does to us psychologically.
Yeah, February for fucking terrible games. That's what we're gonna do.
Farm February. There we go. That's
Farm February. All right, let's close this one out with one more game. Spider-Man 2 coming out next month.
Spider
Have you played the
Man.
original Spider-Man PS4?
Original Spider-Man 2 is
Not Spider-Man. Okay, yeah,
a
yeah. You go
stone
first.
cold classic. You
I know. I love that game.
deliver pizza. You'd go to random hideouts and beat the shit out of people. There's like a
You perform wrestling moves on people off of buildings and crush
yeah.
their skull into the cement because
There's a
Spider-Man's a good guy that doesn't kill people.
yeah. There's like this cool like sort of villain who you always have to fight him in funhouse areas, and those are really cool. I felt like that was like a really good open world game where like the balance of like plot stuff being integrated and then random other missions. I just felt like it was very seamless, like going back and forth between the two of them. I liked that.
I did think it was a bit off-putting when Spider-Man stole money from Aunt May to spend on drugs to sell to children. But other than that, it was a really good game.
Yeah, they went a little hard on the immersion of like real gritty 1990s New York. I thought that was a little intense. But uh,
Anyway, Spider-Man PS4, in my opinion, is one of the cornerstones of that
hmm,
console.
hmm,
Well, even though I'm personally not like a huge fan of it, like I
hmm,
enjoyed it, but it's like very much like a Arkham City clone, in my
hmm.
opinion.
Interesting.
A lot of people would like uh, crucify me for saying that because it's like it's the best game ever. It's got web slinging, bro. The story is so immersive, but it's
Mm-mm.
like nothing about that game stood out to me on a mechanical level. It all felt very rehashed. But have you played it before?
Spider-Man for PlayStation 4?
Yeah,
Nah, I'm not gonna buy a Marvel game.
I didn't think so. Marvel game.
Not for me, bro.
I mean, I guess you can call it that. I wouldn't put it in the same vein as that.
Sure.
It's not really invested in the same level of storytelling drivel that Marvel is.
That's
The
true, and
story is still
also
uninspired,
there's a
but like,
precedent for Spider-Man specifically having like pretty good video games that are like also famously narrated by Bruce Campbell. So that's like another cool
this one is
thing.
not narrated, so you probably won't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the whole thing in Spider-Man 2 is that Bruce Campbell like does this completely deranged narration over the whole thing. Um, sort of like
I've seen the videos. It looks funny.
yeah.
Yeah, but the Spider-Man PS4 basically like it's like a very safe single player game is what I describe it as. There's nothing like overly artistically challenging about it.
Mm,
The design is very safe in that, the
hmm,
mechanics are simple to understand. It's fun but not like overly engaging. And the story just is simple enough to follow along with, but not really trying to pursue any unique narrative themes.
hmm,
It's a very classic safe. It's a classic example of like a PS4 game in my opinion.
mm,
If you want to point to like a PS4 classic game, like that's the one I would
hmm,
point to.
hmm.
Because like Last of Us 2, Uncharted 4, Death Stranding, God of War, all kind of try to do like unique things with their narratives that are like divisive, I guess. Whereas Spider-Man is very much committed to a very simple story that's
I see. It's more
not really
conventional.
going to frustrate anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like
Except
what you.
maybe like hardcore like Spider-Man Reddit fans, where like they want like every single adaptation to be like exactly one-to-one comic book
Hmm.
storytelling.
Yeah, maybe this
That
is
they probably got really mad about the game, but yeah,
for
I mean
sure.
everyone else who's like normal is probably fine with it.
It might be mean to say, but I don't really expect anything more than a conventional story from like a superhero video game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I'm just saying like it's not the sort of game I'd look at and be like that's a masterpiece. That's the game I want to recommend to everyone because for a lot of people it is right. A lot of people worship
Hmm.
this game. They think it's like the best thing ever.
Hmm.
So a lot of people are very excited about the sequel, and I'm excited. I'm gonna play it. Probably not like full price.
Yeah.
I would not. This is not the sort of game I think is worth full price. Or I mean, it's worth it. You know, they put a lot of effort into it, but it's
Hmm.
not the sort of game I would look for like a unique artistic experience in a game.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, also like to me, what's annoying about like superhero stuff in general is that like in comic book canon, there are so many like really insane stories that because like they've just had to make like so many like Justice League or Batman or like Spider-Man like stories over the years that there are a lot of them that are like very unconventional and strange and completely off the wall, and I like want to see some of those get adapted into like movies or video games, but instead it's
Yeah,
like yeah, it is just the safest possible because it just for me it's annoying because it's like okay, if you're gonna do this like marketing structure, this like business structure where you're like okay, the because it's like an intellectual property that has a built-in market like a built-in market, a built-in audience where it's like no matter what we put out that's Avengers related or Justice League related, we're going to make a shitload of money off of it no matter how it is, no matter if it's good or not. Like there's a certain number of people who will just always go see it, so why not like make it in a way that's like interesting, you know what I mean, instead of like
yeah.
you know what I mean,
I mean,
like
the problem
take
is like with
chances on it.
the more recent Marvel stuff is they've kind of been forced to be less safe with their storytelling or their
Interesting.
stories, I guess.
Yeah.
But the problem is that a lot of those like more unique stories have not really been made in like the full effort big
Hmm.
budget films we're used to from like classic Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
They're just like relegated to like Disney Plus shows, like
Hmm.
6 episode TV shows,
Hmm.
which is like kind of well, for one, it's kind of I've lost a lot of interest in television recently because of how Disney has polluted the television landscape today with so
Hmm.
many of these fucking very not straightforward, but like very easily reproducible
Hmm.
6 episode format TV shows, TV
Hmm.
series.
Hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, getting back to the topic of the game, which is what we're actually here to talk
Sorry. Yeah.
about.
I'll do anything other than
Uh,
talk about Spider-Man 2 for PlayStation 5. Is this the
like,
one
yeah,
where
the
they have
most
the whole
interesting thing that's going to
trailer
happen in
for
this
it?
game.
Where it's like you're chasing the guy in the water? That's like
Oh,
the
yeah,
yeah.
that was it. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
state of play from June.
I see. Interesting.
The most interesting thing that's going to happen in this game is that Spider Man is being controlled by Venom. Oh my god. Well, I can't wait to see this happen. I've never seen this adapted in the Spider Man media before.
It's true. Is the Eminem
So, yeah.
song gonna be in the game?
I'm afraid not. They probably don't have the rights to Eminem.
Oh, come
But yeah.
on. This is bullshit.
I mean, the main things I want to see from this game are probably a more creative and a more unique story, which
Mhm.
we're not going to get, unfortunately, because it is a Marvel game. You're right.
Mhm. Mhm.
To some extent, it is licensed by Marvel, so they have some creative rights over
Yeah.
how it's adapted.
Mhm.
And I think Sony also wants to just have like a game that's going to have the most appeal possible,
Mhm.
which means not deconstructing the characters or having them do morally complex things at all. Just like
Yeah.
play it very safe.
For
My
sure.
biggest gripes with the original game, besides just like the uninspired design, were also just like they had these really annoying like sections where you play as MJ or Miles Morales.
Yeah, that's
Neither of them
annoying.
have superpowers. They just kind of like
Right.
walk around and hide from people during like sections where you're not playing as Spider-Man. And, like hack stuff. You gotta like hack into the forklift to lift the barrels out of the way so you can escape.
Yeah.
That's what kind of like one of the main sections is just like incredibly boring.
Yeah, those parts don't really make me feel like
And then
Spider-Man.
the combat is also just like not nearly as interesting as those sections that make you feel like Spider-Man.
Mhm.
No, it feels like I'm playing as a really like a really weak side character.
Playing as
actually.
a guy.
I'm playing as a guy called Miles Morales.
I'm a
Yep, that's what he's
guy.
called.
Yeah.
And then the other criticism I had was just like The movement was like actually really good. Like
Hmm.
I think that's one of my favorite games to play, just to move around in.
Hmm.
Like it's Just Cause 3 tier because Just Cause 3 has this really good wingsuit.
Hmm.
It just and Dying Light also. Dying Light, Just Cause 3, and Spider Man are like the trifecta of games that have like really good open world traversal
Hmm.
systems where you never really want to fast travel because it's just more fun to go there by yourself without fast travel. The movement in Spider Man is like really in depth and fluid and satisfying, and then the combat is just like button mashing simulator. It's like so brain dead. You just have like an item wheel of a dozen special abilities that just one
Hmm.
shot enemies and just makes the combat so simple.
I see.
And all the boss fights are just QT simulators. So
Hmm.
yeah, the combat is not nearly as robust or as interesting as the movement is in that game. So
Hmm.
I would like to see a more restrained and a more challenging approach to combat in the sequel, which we're not going to get from what's evidenced by the trailers so far. It's just going to be a
Mm-hmm.
sequel to the original game with new abilities, new mechanics, and new story beats, which are not really new, just rehashed from the comics.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably
Yeah,
worth playing, but not like you said, not at list price.
probably not worth playing for full price, but I will check it out eventually. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to be the PS5's bestseller by a long shot. Unsurprisingly, everyone's going to buy this game. So yeah,
Mm.
regardless, it's fine. I mean, it works for Sony, right? This is what people want. They want a Spider-Man game, so Sony's delivering. This is like, if this is the sort of game you're interested in, then this is like the perfect game for you.
Yeah, it is crazy that I'm contractually obligated to buy it as a PS5 owner, even though I
Yep,
don't
that's
plan on
true.
playing it at all.
Jim Sony actually breaks into your house if you do not buy within 48 hours of release.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
True story.
Yeah.
They actually send lawyers after you to sue you for breach of contract because when you buy a PS5, you have to buy every Sony game that comes out.
It's not the Sony gaming building. I think it's for music, but the Sony building in Manhattan is so cool. It's like it has really crazy design. It looks like a skyscraper where like at every level they've like turned it a little bit, like twisted